Good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
And I'm Rich Carlson.
And we are Railfans. Well, good evening, everybody. It's another Train Aficionado episode. And this show, we're talking about police scanners tonight and how they relate to the hobby.
Yeah, the police scanners aren't just for the police.
No, I mean, it's certainly for Railfanning. Just fixing my headset here this evening.
That's okay. I was just dancing along to the music there when we were.
So we've been Railfans for quite a long time. And scanners are definitely a key tool to the arsenal. Yeah. I mean, a lot of Railfans will typically have a camera or their smartphone if they're taking photos or video. A lot of times they'll maybe have, if they're able to scrounge up a railroad timetable, or they may have some notes, of various trains that go through. There's a lot of stuff online that you can use, for signal sheets, all types of stuff. But the scanner is definitely a key tool to be able to know when the next train is coming. There'll be clues and indications, right?
Yeah. Next to a little, knowledge of the terrain and a camera, the scanner is probably your next best tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, and that's something that I've used throughout the years, Railfanning. I can't envision doing it without a scanner. And I see so many people trackside without a scanner. I mean, it's kind of gives you, a hint of what's going on. So tonight's show, we're going to talk about the value of a scanner, and we'll go over even, things to listen for, and also what scanners we recommend. So we'll look at that all tonight.
I mean, I'll go trackside and I'll have the scanner. I won't even bother with the camera a lot of times. It's about seeing the trains, and the scanner helps you see the trains. It's not about photography for me, although I still do that.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing with me. I love being out there, and I also like to document what I see, so I do the photography. So this is episode 2 of Train Aficionado, so we're really excited about that. Those of you that are joining us this evening, well, welcome. We'll continue on with the slideshow here. So tonight, we've got a different show tonight. We're broken out Railfanning 101 and 102. So basically, 101 is going to be understanding communications. 102 is going to be the scanners we recommend. And then Rich was over at Flagstaff this past weekend. We're going to look at some photos. He's going to tell us a lot about Flagstaff and Railfanning there. So we've got a really good show for you guys. So happy that you're joining us this evening. Let's dive into it. Looks like we got a birthday out there, Rich.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Happy birthday, Joe, and thank you so much for spending your birthday evening with us.
Absolutely. Blow out the candles there, Joe.
We saw your comment. So we have a special show coming up this Friday. Train Aficionado Live with myself and my dad will be live from Glitzen, PA at the Glitzen Tunnel, talking about Railfanning at Altoona, PA and the Horseshoe Curve. That'll be Friday the 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you join us on this show. Rich Carlson could make a surprise appearance on there. You never know. Things are always fun and exciting happening on the show. So definitely tune in for Friday night. That's going to be a good show. We're going to go over, Railfanning in Altoona is such a cool place. And we're going to highlight some of the places you can go Railfanning, some of the key places you can eat, because, food and Railfanning.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we don't have this physique for nothing.
No, that's right. We have well earned our pounds and inches. So yeah, and that's probably one of the best railfan areas in the country because there's got so many different places you can go railfanning and things to do and places to see up there.
Yeah, I mean it's it's got the dedicated spots that are out, and then there's a few spots that are known rail fanning locations. Norfolk Southern is fully aware of what you're doing out there, so you'll get a wave or two. It's just they know this, they know the deal.
Yeah, as long as you're not being stupid, you aren't going to be kicked out, and it's go where you're allowed to go, and there's a lot of places where you're allowed to go. You can get some great pictures and great access to the great places to take pictures.
Yeah, that's for sure. So we'll dive into that on Friday night. So that should be exciting. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to Train Aficionado on all of our social media on Facebook, YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button tonight. The Twitter and Instagram, and then make sure you check out the website trainaficionado.com, the blog. There's a rail fanning guide to Altoona. So definitely check that out if you're making a trip out there. I'll be probably making some edits to that as I go there. Again, I'm always improving upon that portion of the website. You may find some new spots to rail fan as well.
Yeah, it looks like the slideshow isn't showing. Hang on. Oh, yeah, it is. I'm sorry. Never mind. That was me.
Rich, I'm going to let you take this slide.
All righty. So I came across this the other day when I was rail fanning, and I saw that, and I'm scratching my head trying to figure out what it is. And it wasn't until I took a step back before I actually figured out what it is. So the first person who can guess what this thing is from this picture will give a shout out on our on the show here. So if you know what this is, leave us a comment so that we can let you know. So if we don't get the answer right away, Jonathan, make sure you skip the next slide so we don't get the answer away. So if you know what this is, let us know. And I was thinking about it, and I had a couple ideas, and I'm thinking, no, that's not it. That's not it. And then when I realized what it was like, that's it.
Was this something that you discovered on Saturday? You said, what is this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had no clue what it was at first. And then getting right up close to it, I didn't know. And then I eventually figured it out by taking a step back and taking a peek at it. So once you realize what it is, it's very obvious.
So what we'll do is we'll stand by for a comment on this. What I'm going to do
now, if you had seen this, would you have known what it is?
Well, I know the answer, but now because I saw it, but I think we got
we got a winner.
Yes.
James Horn, you are the winner. And that is exactly what it is. So there you go. So it's kind of hard to see in this picture because it kind of blends in the rail. So if you can see where I'm pointing here, directly below and directly above the blue sign on that crossing pole.
Yep, you can see the mouse kind of.
Right there. And then there's another one above the blue sign as well.
Now you should be able to see the red pointer. And then there's one right here. Yeah. Me looking at this, I would have probably not have noticed it unless I was standing next to it. And then I would have been a little bit, what is this? Because we would, you'd be looking at it and then not thinking. And then
first thing I thought of was a sign holder where you can hang a sign on there temporarily that maybe the city put it up there or something like that. Then when I took a step back, I realized, oh, okay, that's where the guy stands out to change the light bulbs or to work on the sign on the pole. So, yep. That's exactly what it is, James. So you are the first winner of the night.
There it is. So put up his answer right on the screen right now. Thank you so much, James. Great answer to that. So we'll continue on with our presentation. So we've got some photos from viewer Chris S.
Yep.
Look at these great photos. I mean, he's got a wide variety of locomotives. He's got the traditional Amtrak locomotive and the newer Amtrak locomotive there, and then we've got a CN locomotive. Have you been to?
East Lansing. Yeah, I've been in the area a few times. So it's got a P42 in the upper left there, and then a Challenger directly below that for Amtrak.
Right here.
Those Challenger locomotives are kind of neat looking. And if you ever see one going by at night, that radiator section that is smack dab
right over here, right?
Yeah, exactly. They light that up really bright, and it looks weird seeing that thing going by at night. So if you ever get a chance to see a Challenger go by at night, you see that thing brightly lit in the middle. It's a ventilation fan, I guess, to suck in cool air to cool the engine and such. But it's just unusual to see that bright lighting there.
Yeah, you're not expecting that. So
yeah.
Hopefully we'll set to see some of those rolling back and forth through Altoona, because that'll be neat at night, seeing that light up.
I haven't seen those. I've seen all P32s on the Pennsylvanian trains that come through there, but you never know. They could be switching over to those as new. Right now, those are used mostly on the Midwest trains and on the Pacific Coast, but eventually Amtrak is going to be replacing the P42s with Challengers. So it'll take a few years, but yeah, you're going to see those on a curve eventually.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, it looks like a really newer train station as well. The photographs that are on the right of your screen, it looks like a newer station.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like they've well maintained it as well. A lot of stations get kind of decrepit looking, and this one looks like they've done a pretty decent job keeping this clean and up to date. And then, of course, you see the Canadian National, what was that, an SD70 ACE?
Yeah, it looks that way. I mean, that looks really cool. I mean, I think this is definitely a good spot. Thank you so much, Chris, for sending these photos in. We appreciate that. We had to post those. They look awesome.
Yep.
All right. So scanners for railfanning, understanding railroad communications. The photo here that's on this slide is actually taken in Salisbury, North Carolina. I got this on a bridge, and then of course you can see the station there over on the right. I love how this photo came out, and this is actually hauling a bunch of open hoppers with the ballast for the track.
Oh yeah, kind of hard to see the cars in the back because of the exhaust. Yeah,
it looks like it's just the locomotives, and you really got to look into it, and you can see it there.
Yeah, the heat trails kind of blend the cars in the background. So yeah, that's a great shot.
Just a tip for you viewers out there, if you have a drone. I don't have a drone, but I've heard some horror stories. One guy was telling me that he was out railfanning, and this kid had a drone, and he was flying the drone directly over the locomotive. And you know what those fans did? It sent it on a tizzy. So be careful out there if you've got a drone.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing too is drones are a neat thing, but they can be very serious issues. I've seen some pretty interesting, but disconcerting videos of drones that are being flown right up to the windows of the locomotive and stuff like that. That ain't cool. No. Don't do that.
Fly it from a distance. You can get some awesome shots from a distance. You don't need to be right up on it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you don't want to cause issues. So abuse it and lose it.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So let's continue on. So why should we have a scanner while railfanning? Well, you get to hear communication. It allows you to know when the next train's coming. There's several indications on the radio. And then the great thing, I love having a scanner if you're able to view a yard and they've got a crew working the train versus a remote locomotive, like an actual crew working the yard. You get to hear every single move that they're going to do.
Yeah, and to hear all that stuff as it's going on just really increases the enjoyment of watching it. And a lot of people think, well, why do you want to watch a yard job go back and forth, It's actually very interesting to see how they do these things, and to be able to listen to them on scanner, it just really increases your understanding of the activities going on. It really does make it a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, that is a phenomenal thing to just be able to watch it and be able to listen to it. I mean, yeah, it's amazing how they build a train because, when it comes into the yard, it's coming off of one train and then it's broken up, so it's going to its next destination. So the
Yeah.
cars are all mixed up, and then you're trying to figure out how to jockey these cars around, to be able to build your train, and sometimes you have to build in a proper order so you could
Yeah.
detach at another yard and keep going.
Yeah, and if you do it in the right order from the yard, when you get to its final destinations, because they're going to drop 20 cars here, 20 cars there. So they block the train. So you're going to have a block of cars for Chicago, a block for Indianapolis, and a block for Pittsburgh. So as the train goes across the country, it can drop that block at first, at Pittsburgh. Then when it gets to Indianapolis, it'll drop that block and so forth. So instead of having to rebuild the train a whole 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, and I did a whole blog entry why every rail fan should have a scanner. And you can read more about that at trainaficionado.com. So the website, of course, many of you probably are familiar with it. So you probably have seen these before. These are the frequencies, the American Association of Railroads, and these are the channel numbers. So these are the things that you want to have handy. A lot of times you'll hear over the radio, go to 8080. So, if you have the list of this, you would know 8080. Looking at this would be 161.3100 is the frequency.
Yeah.
So this is definitely handy to have. A lot of scanners, which we're going to learn tonight, have these as preset service searches, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they give a 4-digit number on the air, say go to channel 8080, that means that the receive and transmit frequencies are the same, 8080. The first 2 digits are the transmit frequency, the second 2 are the receive. If they say something like 3660, then the transmit frequency is 160.65, channel 36, and then the receive frequency is channel 60, 161.01.
Yeah, and this is good to have this list because in case you want to just look real quick, you can figure out what frequency they're going to. Steve hit the nail right on the head with his comment right there.
Absolutely. Using a scanner is comparable to watching a silent movie versus an HD movie with sound. You betcha.
That is perfect, Steve. A clap for you, that's for sure. That is right on the money.
Right. Now, there's another trick you can do too. Since most scanners have many, many channels, hundreds of channels,
we know.
Yeah, program all these channels in your scanner memory instead of using the search, and put channel 17 in channel 17, and put channel 48 in channel 48, and so on. So that way, when they say go to channel 32, you don't have to think, okay, channel 32 is 160.59, I think, yeah. This way, you just go to channel 32 on your scanner, and boom. I was riding an Amtrak across the country a couple times, and I did just that, and I didn't have to worry about what frequency was what channel. I just went to that channel on my scanner.
Yeah, and that's super easy. That's the best way to be able to just do it. Just make it correspond to the channel number of your scanner.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a big difference. Now, the other thing you're going to see here, you're going to see some odd channels through 2 through 6. By the way, this channel plan is good in both the U.S. and Canada, but channels 2 through 6 are typically not used in the U.S. for railroads. They are in Canada, but in the U.S., those are normally assigned to trucking and usually some other businesses. Those channels 2 through 6 are used in Canada for railroads there. They are included in the railroad radios. And then there's one channel that's missing from this list that might be used on a regular basis, and that's 161.61. And if you're in the Chicago area, that's still used on the old Rock Island main line in the Chicago area by Metra. So that channel used to be a railroad channel, and then it was reallocated to other uses. But since the Rock Island had already been using it, they were allowed to use it. And when that trackage eventually became owned by Metro, Metro retained use of it.
All right, we'll continue on here. So understanding the communication. So most railroads are using what's called a non-repeater system. It's a line of sight. And this slide kind of will give you what this all looks like. So you can see the dispatchers transmitting off of multiple towers along the line. And the green is almost like a range of what that signal will look like. And then the engineer and conductor, the engineer using the cab radio, which has a little bit more power, actually a lot more power than his handheld radio. So you may hear like yard operations in a distance, but you won't hear the conductor because it's typically a 5-watt radio. You'll hear the engineer replying back to him. So let's take a look at this diagram here. So you see the line, and we have multiple sites along the line. Now, granted, those sites have a receive, so they'll be able to eavesdrop in on the crews on the line. As you can see, our train there, and the range of that signal. So he's in range of that tower that's in the middle. And then we see that the transmit of the dispatch is kind of in the middle of the two towers, giving the best coverage for that area. So we've got two scanners on the screen. We have scanner number 1 and we have scanner number 2. So if this person at scanner number 1 is standing there on the main line, he is only, or she is only able to hear the dispatcher.
Right.
Now, the other Railfan that's at scanner number 2 is able to hear the train and the dispatcher because he or she is close enough to the train at this point.
Yep. And the thing is with range is there's no way to tell that you're going to be able to hear a transmission from 5 miles or 50 miles or 100 miles. It's all dependent on 100 different factors, which are going to vary all the time. The distance you are, the power of the transmitter, how good your receiver is, elevation, things in the way to block you. Is there a mountain between you and them? All kinds of different stuff. So it's not always etched in stone how far you're going to be able to receive something, but you're going to definitely be able to receive the dispatcher much further away than you are the locomotive, and you're going to hear the locomotive much further away than a portable.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to show on this slide is depending on where you are, you're going to be able to hear various things. Typically, yeah, you're going to hear the dispatcher. And then the dispatcher will sometimes transmit off of one tower, or they can end up transmitting off of multiple towers. So you may actually hear communication that's several miles away from you, which is a good thing because you're going to know what's coming up ahead of you. If he's communicating, for example, I'm in Landis, North Carolina, and I can typically hear the dispatcher sometimes communicating with a train coming up the main line in Charlotte or in Salisbury. So I'm able to hear that dispatcher communicating, which is great. It gives me a heads up. So even though that you're hearing one side of the communication a lot of times, you're going to get a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Well, like where I'm at, I live north of the mountains, and there's a dispatch tower for the branch line going into Phoenix on the mountain, which is basically out my backyard. And I can hear the dispatcher, but there ain't no way I'm going to hear the train on the other side of that mountain.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this was a slide that I came up with. I'm trying to describe what line of sight is, and this is typically what it is. It's basically, that radio in the cab is going to have a certain range. It's transmitting off the cab, and then of course the tower is going to have great distance because it's high up.
Yeah, and then absolutely. And then scanner guy number 1 is going to be able to hear the tower that's on the left side, most likely, because he's going to be in range of that. But chances are he's not going to hear the tower that's all the way to the right. He'll hear the center one and the one on the left, but he may not be able to hear the one that's far over on the right because he's just too far away.
So that's keep it in mind, when you're listening to railroad communication, that you may hear one side versus another, but, you may actually be able to hear, depending on, let's say you're at a high elevation along the main line, you may end up in a sweet spot hearing both dispatcher and crew.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you got a little bit of elevation, if you're kind of on a high ground or something like that.
Oops.
Sorry about
Yes,
that. I had the
sure.
hiccups all day today.
So these are the common channels that railroads use. So a road channel. So you can think of that as your main line, basically communication between trains and other trains, line crews, dispatchers within and trains themselves. The road channel is the most listened to channel for most rail fans, carrying the most traffic about operations of trains. Now, the yard is the next big one because you're able to hear a lot of yard switching. That's what we were talking about early.
Yeah.
That's definitely a key one. Some railroads use the yard channels as secondary channels to the road channels. So this is a good frequency.
At 19 minutes after the comment there from Joe. That's exactly right. When you are watching a yard, you want to be listening to the yard channel.
Yeah, and this is definitely a key thing to be able to listen to that. So that's definitely a thing that holds true. I've heard that the yard channel is a secondary for the main road channel. And the other thing too, I've heard, CSX does this a lot. They may be going into an industrial park and they don't want to do they're doing some minor moves in there and they don't want to run it on the road channel, tying up the channel. So they'll switch over to that yard channel, even though they're not technically in a yard, but they will use it so they're not tying up the road channel. Like for instance,
a lot of railroads would do that.
Like I was listening to a lot of stuff along the Northeast corridor, and that would have just raised havoc on there with all the commuter and Amtrak using it. If they were, doing so many cars back, all right, one car, and then you're at the hitch and so on, that would be just tying up the radio. So that's why it's a courtesy thing too, just to hop on that other channel.
Yeah, and then as soon as they get back on the main line, they have to switch back over to the road channel again. So that's a perfectly acceptable thing. And a lot of times the railroads will use that yard channel as kind of a go-to channel or a chit-chat channel to clear traffic off the main channel. I hear that on the Iowa Interstate a lot. They switch over. They have their road channel and then they have their yard channel. But a lot of times they'll be doing a grain elevator or something like that, and they'll just switch over to the yard channel, do all that stuff, so not chit-chatting on the road channel. And occasionally I'll hear them. You got two trains that are coming towards each other, and they will switch over to the yard channel and chat back and forth to arrange their meet, and then they'll switch back to the road channel. So even if you're listening to the road stuff, put the yard channels in there. You might hear some interesting stuff.
That's for sure. And a lot of railroads have this next channel, which is the dispatcher. This is used as a separate channel from the road channel on some railroads for trains to contact the dispatcher. This allows the dispatcher to only listen to traffic that's directed to him or her and not the routine traffic. And a lot of times Norfolk Southern will have this, and you'll hear these tones go over that channel. They're basically getting the attention of the dispatcher. Most of these dispatchers are in one central location. CSX is in Jacksonville, Florida, and then all of Norfolk Southern's operation is in Atlanta, Georgia now, I believe. So they're dispatching hundreds and hundreds of miles away, to these trains. And usually a lot of times...
The Union Pacific dispatchers are in Omaha, BNSF are in Fort Worth, and Kansas City Southern. They're probably in Kansas City, I would assume.
And then a lot of times these dispatchers are not working one particular line. They usually work in multiple lines, so the tones will get their attention, and they'll answer the train that's given the tones. And in the line that I'm on has both a dispatcher and a road channel.
Yeah. The CN does something very similar to that as well. They have their end-to-end channel is what they call it, and that's effectively the road channel. And that's the channel that the trains will normally be on. The defect detectors will be on that, and that's where you're going to find the locomotive crews. And then the dispatcher will be on a totally separate frequency. And when you want to speak to the dispatcher, you switch over to the dispatcher channel, tone him out, dial some numbers on your touch tone pad or press the dispatch tone on your radio. And then the dispatcher will hear that, will get alerted. There'll be a light flashing or screen, something on his computer screen flashing. He answers that, and then he talks to you. The dispatcher can also switch over to the road channel to call a train. So if the train's not listening to the dispatcher channel, the dispatcher can switch over to the road channel, call the train, and either if it's something short, they'll just do it right then. If it's something long and drawn out, they may say, hey, switch over to the dispatcher channel. I've got a track warrant for you.
Yep. And these are all things I've heard on the radio. The other cool thing to be able to have programmed into your radio is the maintenance away channels. And these are definitely key for use for track work. These may be used for tracking, performing routine maintenance, plowing, snow plowing operations, something that you don't see that much there. And
not here, but you do up in Flagstaff.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've seen, a live look with snow on the ground there.
Yeah.
And other work that's being done on the road trains as well. So maintenance away is definitely a good channel to have in there. Anything you want to add to maintenance away?
Yeah, if you're along the former Santa Fe, 161.01 seems to be used by maintenance away operations all over the former Santa Fe lines and maybe up on the old Burlington Northern line since it's now merged with the BNSF. But Santa Fe has used 161.01 for years as a maintenance away channel. The old Chicago Northwestern used to use 160.455. Now that's part of the Union Pacific. So on the old Northwestern lines, you'll hear them on that. So there are some very common channels. But the other thing with maintenance away is a lot of times they'll just pick a quiet channel and switch over to it without, they'll just drop one, and they'll put, they'll drop the channel down to one channel on the from the road channel and just use that for the maintenance away channel for that particular project. So they can use almost any channel for maintenance away, and that's why it's important to scan all the railroad channels.
Yeah, it's definitely a key thing. Like a lot of times when I'm going rail fanning, take for instance, when I go rail fanning in Altoona, I will be the dork at that point with two radios. I'll have a radio that's locked in on road or dispatch. And then, or I'll have one radio that's scanning both road and dispatch. And then I'll have another radio that's just doing a railroad service search to pick up any unknown traffic, especially if I'm going to be out there all day long. I want to know if there's a maintenance crew out there. Or I want to know if there's something unusual going on and I don't have that frequency programmed into my scanner. So that's
Yeah. And one of the reasons why you want to keep an eye on the maintenance away channels is if you get to a location and you hear a lot of chatter on the maintenance away channel, they may not be any trains on that track all day long if they've got a maintenance window to close that track. So I've been skunked like that on occasion. I'll drive all day. I did that once. I drove all day to get to a location up in Michigan to watch trains. And I got there and there was a maintenance window. The track was going to be closed all day until 7 o'clock that night. Just drove all the way for nothing. And the only reason I found out about that instead of waiting all day and seeing nothing was because I was listening to the maintenance away channel.
Yeah, Dale mentions, maintenance away work goes on up in his area before the snow flies. So they're prepping everything, making sure everything's good to go.
Dale's at it could be snowing tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a look at the next one, which is the police. The local railroad police will be using these channels for communications. A few of the private railroads allow actually have police versus security, so it depends.
Yeah, railroads are one of two private organizations that are generally allowed to have full police officers versus just security. Railroads and the other one are colleges and universities. So a railroad, even though it's a private company, they can actually have police officers and they can actually make arrests almost anywhere for crimes that they see or crimes against their employing railroad. And oftentimes they'll be using the railroad frequencies themselves to talk to the trains or to, at least listen to the trains that's going on. But they can also have their own channels on the VHF railroad channels. 161.205 is very common, at least on the east.
Yes, that's right.
For railroad police. But there's sometimes also using other channels, or they could be using business channels, and they even have access to a lot of the public safety systems. In Illinois, they have the Starcom system, the statewide trunking system, and several of the railroads have access to that, and they use that for their routine stuff and also for mutual aid with other police departments.
That's for sure. And we've got one more humps. Or hump, I should say, that's a channel that they're using for hump yard switching, and it will be labeled in the database hump for that particular channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So what hump means is they have a big hill in the middle of the yard, and they push a string of cars up the hill, and then at the top of the hill they uncouple 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, how many cars they want, and they go down the other side of the hill separately, and they arrange the track switches down towards the bottom of the hill so that the cars go on to a specific track. So they'll push the cars up the hill, and then they'll fall down by gravity on the other side of the hill, and then they'll go, these cars will go to track 7, those cars will go to track 4, and these cars will go to track 18, so that they can build cars that way. There are less and less humps now than there used to be, but if you ever get a chance to watch a hump in operation, it's a lot of fun to kind of watch that. You see the stuff coming up and coming down. These days, it's all computer controlled. All the switches are all computer controlled, and they have another thing called a retarder. Mm-hmm. And what that is a device that's mounted to the rails on the back side of the hill, on the downhill side of the hill, and it slows the cars down. And those are also computer controlled these days, and it'll slow the cars down as they're going downhill so that they don't crash and damage the cars or their contents by hitting other cars on that track. And again, since it's all computer controlled, it's done very efficiently, and it'll slow down the tracks. And sometimes you hear the squealing because they have devices that kind of squeeze the rails, and there's some newer ones out there, but it's a fascinating thing.
I definitely want to be able to see that sometime.
Yeah. So Dale says that they have a memorandum of understanding with the BNSF Security for Communications, assuming that's on the Montana State Rail radio system. Same thing in Illinois, same thing in many other states. The railroad police, since they do have full police powers, are fully authorized to operate on police channels, and often will have a memorandum of understanding or an MOU to communicate on local and regional radio systems, especially mutual aid channels. If there's something big happens on the railroad, a derailment or something else like that, they need to be able to speak with other police departments to coordinate traffic and safety considerations and response to an incident.
That's for sure. So let's continue on with the slideshow here. So this is something that we see a lot on the end of a train. It's normally known as a Fred. It's named a Fred. So tell us a little bit about this, Rich.
All right. So these are devices. They're called EOTs, end of train device, or a FRED, a flashing rear end device, or sometimes the F stands for something else. Depends on who you talk to. And basically, they've replaced cabooses. And one of the main job of a caboose was to monitor the pressure of the brake line at the end of the train, and also to detect motion so that the engineer can tell when the back of the train starts moving. Because of the way the train stretches like a rubber band and contracts, the front of the train can be moving quite some time before the back of the train gets moving. So an EOT will transmit by radio data, and it'll tell the engineer when the rear of the train starts moving, what the brake line pressure is, and if there's any other issues. And nowadays there's two-way EOT devices, which the rear device can actually initiate a brake application from the back of the train, so that it'll help the train stop much more efficiently.
That's cool, because it must take there's a long time delay, because all this is going through the lines, and being able to do that. That must
train
also,
that's a mile and a half long,
yeah, it's crazy, to be able to see that. And this was parked in the next town over to me, Kannapolis. So I was able to get, I zoomed in a little bit. I wasn't on the property, but I was able to zoom in and get a really good shot of the Fred at the back of this train. And you can see there, it's connected to the brake line to be able to see what's going on there with with this. But yeah, this is really cool. It says Norfolk Southern on top. It actually has a number ID on it. Even has a handle, which is helpful for the crew to be able to pick that up and move it.
Yep. And then there's a red light towards the top of it, so that it can be used to have a red light at the back of the train, which is required. And the individual number on this particular one at 75924, what they do is the engineer will know what number EOT is assigned to his particular train. He'll dial that number into his EOT receiver on the locomotive, so that he gets signals from this EOT and not the EOT from the other train. That used to be an issue. And there's kind of a funny story that I believe to be true, but you know how stories go on railroads. Sometimes they aren't. But the old Southern Railroad used basically modified boxcars, because the radio equipment was much larger back in the 50s and 60s when this supposedly occurred. And so they had boxcars with all this gear in there. They would put them in the middle of the train as a kind of an air repeater and such, and a remote control to control locomotives. And apparently there were two different trains coming in two different directions. They had these devices, and they somehow or another got confused, and one train was talking to the other, and it caused issues. So they devised a way that each device has got a code number, and that code number is part of the data signal that's transmitted along with that, so that the locomotive will ignore any device other than that one specific device.
That totally makes sense, because it's basically signals being transmitted. It's almost the equivalent of PL tones, or digital PL tones programmed into a radio. It's kind of ignoring everything else and just looking for that particular PL tone.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more sophisticated, but yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's get back to the slideshow. So this is something that we see along the line. This is a photo that I took right in downtown Landis, North Carolina. And you can see the defect detector right there. And you'll typically hear some sort of message. Sometimes it's a computer-generated message. Sometimes it's actually a human voice that you hear that's recorded with various messages. And typically you'll hear CSX, equipment detector, mileposts, 1, 2, 3, 4, no defects, repeat, no defects, total axles, 621, track 1, temperature 63 degrees, detector out. That's a long-winded one. You'll hear variations of that depending on the railroad. The things that I'll look out for defects is hot wheel, dragging equipment. If there's tunnels along the line, it's going to be looking for car heights, wide load, a shifted load, or a hot box. So those are all things that various detectors, and you'll see different types of detectors depending on the line. You know, like on this line here, there's no major tunnels to be concerned about. So you're not going to see in Landis, you're not going to see that overheight equipment to be able to detect that.
Right. Yeah, and you'll see overheight detectors are typically a framework that goes up and over the tracks, and then you'll see wires hanging down, and those wires have sensors on them. So if the train comes by and it hits one of those, that sets off that detector, because those wires are set. If the height limit is 21 feet, that wire is set at 21 feet. If a train hits it, then they know that it's over height and it's going to hit the next tunnel or the next bridge or whatever it is that it's protecting. And then they'll get a warning saying, stop your train, you're too high.
Yeah, and that'll basically be several miles away from the tunnel, allowing the train to be able to stop if necessary.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, because trains don't stop on a dime. So they have to be far enough out where a train at speed will be able to stop. And then shifted load, same type, and wide load, same type of thing. There's sensors on the side that if the train is too wide, it'll set off those detectors as well.
yeah, and that's for sure. I mean, this is
now if you go back to 25 minutes after Chris's question.
Sure, I'll go back to that.
And this is where that will apply. So the railroads do use PL tones and DPL tones occasionally. And Conrail did this, and I'm assuming that CSX and Norfolk Southern are continuing to practice the defect detectors on Conrail back in the day would transmit a PL tone. And the PL tone was one PL tone if there was no errors and a different PL tone if there was an error. And that way the dispatcher system could record those detectors because they had the PL tone. They were able to differentiate those transmissions from other ones. So normally they don't use PL or DPL codes, but this is one instance where they do.
And that makes it a lot easier to be able to distinguish, and so that you're only recording.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too is with that PL tone for the message, the detector with a problem, is now that one can be at a higher priority, and that's at a much louder speaker at the dispatch center or somehow someplace where somebody else will know about it. You'll sometimes hear PL tones and DPL codes on other frequencies, but for the most part, they are not used, but they are occasionally.
Yeah, and that's really neat. Chris noticed that. I mean, that's really neat. I mean, that depends on the railroad. Of course, they have different things, but I've seen PL tones on some Amtrak road channels, like it's only off the dispatcher, so they'll be able to distinguish what tower or tower set they're transmitting off of. So
so on a scanner, we recommend that you do not use PL tones, or if you do have PL tones set it up for PL search so that you'll see that a PL tone is being used, but you'll still hear everything on the channel.
Yeah, and the other thing that I did, so I would be able to distinguish what set of towers they were transmitting off of, is I would program in the frequency multiple times. And it'd be kind of neat to be able to see, oh, he's transmitting off of the Providence set of towers. So I know he's communicating with a train there. And then I had it programmed again, where it was programmed with a PL tone on the Boston towers. And then I had it wide open. So I'd be able to hear, anything and everything that came in. But yeah, if you do it in the search mode, and if you jot down that PL tone such and such is Providence and PL tone such and such is Boston, you'll know what towers are being transmitted on. And that's not with everything, but like Rich said, run it wide open.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to miss traffic because one radio happens to be transmitting to PL and the other ones don't. And occasionally the radios will be misprogrammed to transmit a PL when they really don't use a PL, which is usually not a problem for the railroads because they're listening to it and carrier squelch. Another thing you might see occasionally are some railroads will transmit MDC or some other automatic number identifier. Back in the BN days, the BN Railroad, the Burlington Northern Railroad, their locomotives would transmit an MDC code, usually corresponding with the locomotive number, but not always, I've noticed. Where MDC decoders are a lot more difficult to come by, I happened to have one back in the day, and I could hear that. And it was pretty cool to see that, but I don't think anybody on the BNSF uses that anymore. And for the most part, that's not really useful. But you'll hear a kind of a blurp at the beginning or at the end of a conversation, and that's usually some sort of number identifier.
All right, we'll continue on. So this is another thing that you typically, for us that drive along the highway, you'll see mileposts. The railroads also use mileposts as well. And this is a lot of times how the railroad identify locations along the route, or the engineer, if like take for instance, we hear it every so often on the scanner. We hear people saying, that there's somebody trespassing on railroad property, and the dispatcher will get a call from the police or whoever it may be, that there's reports of trespassers. They'll notify the crew and they'll say, in between this location, or sometimes they'll refer to the mileposts. Be on the lookout. We're getting reports of people walking along the tracks. Or if there's an issue with the train, if it's disabled or it's hit something, the train crew will identify where they're at by the closest mile marker, or the what is it called? The nickname for that area of the line as well. As you can see here, this is also in the photograph is taken in Kannapolis, and I was able to get a photo of this train parked in the siding, conveniently right by milepost 349. And you can see, you can download a lot of these real cool railroad timetables online. And this is one that's for the Charlotte subdivision. And you can see that that's in the Charlotte area, and it's got the mileposts on there, and it shows the line of what it looks like, and some of the abbreviations of Matthews and so on will be on there. So you'll hear those nicknames for certain areas referred to on the radio.
Yeah. And the neat thing about these timetables is a lot of times they're either the railroad timetables, or they're provided by and created by Railfans. But they'll tell you different things about the type of track, how many tracks there are, where the sidings are, where the detectors are, where block signs are if you're in directed traffic control, all kinds of different stuff. And this one here, city ordinance. That means that the city prohibits the train from exceeding 30 miles per hour in that particular section. Speed limits, all kinds of different information is available. The radio channels. It's saying that the road channel is channel 32, and that's how they ring up the dispatcher. So there's a lot of good information to be had there. And even the less current timetables are very useful for rail fans to get that kind of information, so that they'll know that when they're talking about stouts, that's at milepost 313.1, and you're at 312. It's only a mile or so away.
Yeah, and this stuff is very cool. You can find PDFs of it online. You can also, if you go to your local train show, model train shows, sometimes those people that sell these old books, of course, like Rich said, they're going to be some of them are dated, but there's still a lot of great information there. Not a lot changes on a railroad line, but occasionally it does. Siding could be extended. Or they could eliminate a siding, or it could become, like a secondary track could be switched into a main line. I mean, there's so many different things, but for the most part, things are going to be mostly the same, and you're going to be able to use it as a great tool. Yeah, so the other question that we get asked a lot, what about NXDN Digital? We get that asked all the time. We're, along with hosting this show, which is once a month on the Train Aficionado show, we host a show which is called the Scanner Guys, and it's we work for Scanner Master, so we sell scanners, and this is something that we get asked a lot over the phone. What about digital? And there's a big concern about it.
Yeah, so the railroads have been working on switching over to digital for 20 years. And originally they were going to go to P25, and then that didn't happen. So now their plans are to go to NXDN, and everything was going along great. And then positive train control got pushed as a more important thing to work on. And so the guys that were working on the digital conversion switched over to working on PTC, positive train control. And the NXDN conversion kind of got pushed off into the background. So eventually, the railroads are going to probably go to NXDN for the road channels and for all other operations, but it's going to be a long time before that happens. So don't go out and waste a bunch of money on an NXDN radio right now, because it ain't going to happen anytime soon. It'll be likely several years before that starts happening, and you will know about it well in advance because of the way the railroads have to cooperate and coordinate all this type of stuff with each other. The railroads are probably the most interconnected business in the world, where they have to coordinate all that type of activity with all the other railroads, and they have to know all about the switchover well in advance so that they're ready for it to happen.
Yeah, I remember, living in the Northeast Corridor in Massachusetts. You have Amtrak using that line. You have CSX using that line occasionally, and you have the MBTA commuter rail. You have three major users of the line, and they all have to coordinate this at the same time, or it's not going to work at all.
And it's not just the trains on that track, it's all the trains that cross that track or interchange with that track. Yep. So the CSX has to coordinate with Norfolk Southern, who has to coordinate with Amtrak, who has to coordinate with the CN, who has to coordinate with the CP, which has to coordinate with the UP. Everybody and their brother. And so the same thing happened during the narrowband thing, about 10 years ago? Mm-hmm. They did it on track segment by track segment. So they would put out a notice a month in advance saying that the track between Chicago and Milwaukee is going to switch over to narrowband on Monday, November 1st at 8 a.m. So everybody has to have the old programming set up and the new programming set up in their radios. And that includes the locomotive radios, the portable radios, any base stations and stuff that are in place. They have to have both modes so that Monday morning at 8 o'clock, they can switch from the old to the new and still be in communication. So it's going to be a very coordinated, very known very well in advance type of setup before main lines start going to NXDN. There are places that use NXDN now, and more will be in the future. And for the mainline railroads, occasionally some yard operations or auxiliary operations like a car shop or a locomotive maintenance facility or something like that are kind of self-contained. They may have already switched some of those operations to NXDN. Short lines may have already switched over some of their operations to NXDN, and tourist lines as well. But all of these lines, if they have to talk to the main lines or the larger railroads, they still have to have the ability to talk on the old analog channels until everybody has switched all operations to NXDN. And then once everything has switched over, then they can get rid of the old analog stuff.
Yes, that's for sure. And from the New England area, the Conway, Scenic, Taurus line up there in New Hampshire, I believe they're running NXDN, and I know for certain what is it called? The Essex Steam Train is running NXDN. So those
some of those bigger ones, the BNSF yards in the Aurora area and in the Cicero area in suburban Chicago have got some NXDN operations going on there. But again, it's going to be a long time.
Far and few between.
Yeah. So eventually everybody is supposed to switch over, but when that's going to happen is anybody's guess. So if you're going to get a new scanner now, you're probably fine with an analog scanner. But if you really want to get a digital scanner, make sure you get one that's capable of NXDN in the future.
That's for sure. We're going to continue on with our broadcast here. We're going to continue on with scanners for Railfanning. And we're going to talk about some of the scanners we recommend. As you can see, you have lots of options for scanners. Which scanner? Well, you could use almost any scanner as long as it has VHF coverage, 160 to 162 megahertz roughly. You're going to have good coverage there. Handhelds are the best for trackside. Base mobiles are ideal for a fixed location in a car or home. And then, as we covered, digital. If you want to invest into a digital scanner, sure, it's still going to be able to operate on analog. Yep. The thing is if it's a unit-in radio, you want to make sure that you invest in the NXDN update. Well, make sure you get that update for that particular radio. So if and when you have the ability.
At least get one that's capable of being upgraded, like the 436 that's shown there. If you get one that digital scanner that's not upgradable to NXDN, you obviously won't be able to use it if and when they switch over. You don't necessarily have to get the NXDN update now, but if you get one that's capable, when they start switching over, then you can invest the $60 or $75, whatever it costs, to upgrade your radio.
That's for sure. So let's continue on with our slideshow. Where is my mouse? Lost it. There we go. So we've got a couple of handhelds. Of course, we're going to recommend, excuse me, going to Scanner Master. Rich is holding up the 125 AT, which is one of our favorites. And look at it there. We've got a rating system for Train Aficionado. We give this 5 out of 5 spikes. This is one of our favorite handheld radios. And here's why. The price, it's only $130. Analog scanner, 500 channels, 50 channels per bank. So that gives you 10 banks. Programmable by keypad or software. Text tagging. This is really nice. You get to put a name with each channel.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is very important. If you program the names into it, you don't have to remember the frequency.
And the other thing, like Rich said, you can program in channels. The channel layout, and on top of that, if you want to take the time, and if you're doing it on the computer, you can have it so it's with the channel number, and you can have it in text. Channel number such and such, so you could see it large on that screen along with that frequency.
Yeah, mine says AAR channel 36 and AAR channel 37 on the name so that I know what that is. And it's in channel position 36 and 37, so I can just go right to it.
But it's redundancy. Redundancy
is
perfect.
Yeah,
it allows you to not have to think about it. You look right at the radio, you see channel 36, and you see AAR channel 36. Yep, I'm on the right channel.
There you go. And then it also, if you do know if they are using a PL tone or a DPL tone or DCS tone, you can program those into the channel. Again, we recommend that you don't use those on the railroad channels unless you know specifically you have a need for that, because if you do that, you're not going to hear any of the other traffic. But it does have the capability.
It also has service searches, which include railroad and aviation. So this is the transportation scanner that we coin it as, and also marine. It'll do that as well. It takes 2 AA rechargeable batteries or alkaline batteries. It'll run off of a USB AC or DC adapter. So whenever possible, plug in. If you're sitting in the car, plug the radio into the car, and you're not draining your batteries.
And most cars these days have a USB connector in them, so you can plug in any USB connector and it works like a champ.
So that's one radio. The other radio that we have is a newer radio that came out from Uniden. It's the Uniden Bearcat SR330C. Now this radio, it gets 3 spikes. It doesn't have the alpha tagging display. And of course, the 125 AT came out first, and it's definitely our favorite. And the 125 AT's got a larger screen versus the newer radio, and overall, I just like the 125.
The 125 is fantastic, and for it's only $30 more. Yeah, you can save yourself $30, but you're not going to get the name. You're not going to get the PL tone capabilities. So the 30C, which is basically a 500 channel version of the 75 that Ray has, it's a good scanner. It'll do the job, but spend the extra $30 and get the 125, and you can put names on it. So we give this one a 3 out of 5 spikes.
Yep. A lot of the same things that the 125. No PL tone, no channel names. I mean, a lot of times in my 125, I may program a couple other frequencies that are non-railroad and they require, putting in a PL tone. So that's where that comes into handy. Most of the stuff I run wide open, like Rich recommends. And this is all can be purchased through Scanner Master. So definitely check out their website. Let's see here. We'll continue on. Yes, this radio is awesome. If you're looking to be able to put a radio in your home or in your vehicle, and you only care about the railroads, let's say, or aviation, the 15X is the way to go.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more advanced programming wise, but it's best programmed by software. It has alpha tag display. It has the PL tones. It has service searches for air and aviation. And the other thing too is if you want to host a stream on Broadcastify for the railroads, it has a record jack in the back. That's an independent volume controlled jack. So you can turn the volume up and down on the radio to your desired volume level, and it's not going to affect your stream. Now, the only thing that I would recommend is not turning it off, because it'll make your stream silent.
We had one of these set up for a stream. I put a label on there right on the front of the radio: "Do not turn off."
So there was a question in the comments about the two radios that we shown about an AC and DC adapter. There is an AC and DC adapters. They're wall warts, very much like your smartphone device. It's a 5-volt, 1 amp. So we do carry those at Scanner Master. It's basically a wall wart. If you've got a smartphone and you've got extra wall warts, AC adapter wall warts, you can use that. We also carry DC adapters. It's like a wall wart, but it's a cigarette lighter adapter. The cable comes with the radio. So that answers that question. Now back to the 15.
Yeah, so the 15 is a fantastic scanner for the house or for the car. It comes with the power cord for the house, so you can plug it right into the power in the house, right in the wall outlet. Or it comes with 3 different power connectors for the car, whichever one's going to work best for you. The cigarette lighter plug, which plugs directly into the back of the radio and then into the cigarette lighter plug. It comes with a regular wired connector for the round connector on the back of the radio that you can wire into the fuse box. And then it comes with a special 3-wire power cord, which allows you to control the lighting on the screen with your headlight dimmer switch. And when you wire that properly, when you dim your interior lights, the display will dim along with them. So you don't have to adjust the dimmer on the radio when you want to turn the lights down inside the car. And that's really a neat feature. Works really well on railroad channels. Again, works great on aviation channels and analog police and fire channels. And it's a great scanner if you're really into transportation, railroads, aircraft, marine channels. This is the scanner for you.
And it's
not very expensive.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, nicely priced. And we recommend programming this by computer. You can purchase the Butel software from Scanner Master. And that's a great thing to be able to program your scanner. You'll also need a USB cable as well. Scanner Master sells those as well. And it would be the ARC XT basic software would do. And, it's pretty simple. Once you've, got the programming software, you communicate with the radio, you create your programming profile and then send it to the radio. You can program it manually, but it's a bit of a beast because it's got what's called a dynamic allocated memory system. As you can see there, it's got a huge memory capacity. You could store up to 9,000 channels. that it's just memory. With a lot of these radios, they have huge capacities. So I don't need 9,000 channels. You're only going to be using what you need. So if you're programming the 97 railroad channels, so be it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I've got one of these on my desk here, and basically all it does is listen to railroad channels, and it's ideal for that.
Very much so. So we'll continue on here. And here we are. We're at the archive and this is not much of an archive. This is recent because Rich is still waiting on his photos, but we should have them soon, and we'll be able to dive deep into Rich's photo archive. So this past weekend, you went to Flagstaff.
Yeah. Yeah, so my slide collection is still at the processor being scanned. They said I should have them back in the next 2 weeks. I'm hoping. So crossing my fingers and my toes. So hoping to get those in for the next show. So on Saturday morning, I left the house here about 5 o'clock in the morning and drove up to Flagstaff, which is about a 2-hour drive for me. And I love going to Flagstaff. There's the train station. And in fact, I'm watching a live show right now. I got 2 trains going by right now in 2 directions. The train station there has got a virtual rail cam camera, and it's got a great spot for watching trains. You can sit on the benches there to watch the trains. There's a gift shop with a public restroom that you can go into. There's millions of restaurants around, places to see in downtown Flagstaff. And it's just a great spot to watch trains. It's busy. There's lots of trains. I got there, and within the first hour, I saw 4 trains. And I finally left about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I saw probably 25 trains. If you like big GEs and occasionally the big EMD power, you're going to love Flagstaff. And so here's the picture of the camera for Virtual Railfan and the sign that they have there. You can watch the trains. If you turn the volume up on your computer as you're watching them on YouTube, you can hear what's going on. The other day, I was watching the camera, and the Southwest Chief comes through usually in around the 8:30 range in the evening, and it came through pretty much on schedule. And it's about a 10-minute stop at Flagstaff, and the train took off. You hear the guy say, "All aboard." Train started moving. Some guy came running out of the parking lot. Wait. He's, you can hear him yelling at the train, stop. And he's banging on the door of the train, and they didn't stop.
Once
a minute too late, he saw him walking back to the train, and he called the police and said, "Can you call the train and tell them to stop and come back and get me?"
No.
Nope. So yeah, it's a neat place to rail fan. And when you're not rail fanning, you can watch it on YouTube. So you see a couple of the pictures. This is the freight house. Go back to the first one.
Yeah.
So that's the freight house. It's just east of the Amtrak station. This is the original station, and it's now used as kind of an office and a maintenance way facility. And that's the original station at Flagstaff. And then you go back to the next one, and you can see the main Amtrak station, which we'll see a better picture of later. And right now you're seeing a westbound train going up the hill, and it's one of the new GE engines. You can see how huge that rear radiator section is on the newer GEs. And then another train, the one on the right is coming down the hill going eastbound. And I usually park in the parking lot just east of the train station building. It's nice because I can park there. I can sit in the car and read and listen to the scanner and stuff in between trains. Plenty of warning when the gates come down because the trains aren't going real fast. They're going 25, 30 miles an hour usually through there. So you get plenty of warning, but when the gates go down, and I can step out and get my pictures, and I'm standing behind a little fence. So no worry about, being swept up by the motion. And it's just a great place to watch trains. And that train looked like it had a little bit of heat damage.
Oh, yeah, I see that on the beat.
Yeah, and that's one of the big GEs. It's looks like a AC 4400. And so, then
Is this the older color scheme? I noticed that, the slightly different from the left to the right.
Yeah, the one on the right has got the swoosh, which is the current scheme, and that one's a little bit older. They've got several different variations of the paint scheme: the big BNSF in gold, or the swoosh, and they're different variations of the orange, the yellow, and the dark green. And sometimes they'll have a silver undercarriage, and sometimes the undercarriage will be dark green, and different variations. And they seem to be the most inconsistent, but it's nice to see little subtle changes. And if you're into those type of things, you take a look at the nose. You can see the nose on the 5700. You see the yellow band on the very front. It's kind of, if you zoom in, you'll see the little yellow band, and that has the BNSF band. And then on the one on the right, it just has the BNSF swoosh on the front of the nose. So there's several different variations of the paint. Same color schemes, but just different variations on it.
All right, I will go forward, and there's the cameras again.
Yeah.
And
all right. So this is
you almost forgot about this, right?
Almost did, yeah. So when we did our live shot from there 4 weeks ago, when we did that live shot up there, we talked about this, and there are several dozen restaurants within walking distance of the train station, and this is the one I found, and it's really good. And I love pizza, and I love sausage pizza. Being from Chicago, sausage pizza is the way to go. Unfortunately, they cut it in New York style. They cut it in triangles instead of Chicago style, which is square cut. But it's good pizza anyway. And it's a 3-minute walk from the train station. There's a traffic signal right there at San Francisco Street and Route 66, and they're right on the corner, right next to Marley's. And it's good pizza. 2 slices they're big slices, so you can get away with 1 slice, and it's under $10 for 2 slices and a soda, so you can't beat the price, and the pizza is darn good.
And they're not a sponsor of us, but if you're in the area, tell them that the Train Aficionado guys sent you. So we'll get on their radar. When you're out railfanning, you certainly develop an appetite. You spend a lot of time waiting, and it's good to get a good meal in you, so you stay full of good nutrients. Plus, you can get a beverage if it's hot, and stay hydrated. This is really cool. It looks good. You've got a photo there of the sausage pizza. Rich didn't take a photo of his. So I had to go. I looked on their website, and I was able to find it.
No, I ate it too fast to get a picture of it, but it was very, very good. And I love sausage pizza, and it's that stuff. Now, it wasn't as good as Vito's in Crescent, but it was extremely, extremely good.
Yeah, I'll definitely go there and get a sausage pizza in your honor when I go there towards the tail end of this week.
Would you email me one?
Yeah, I'll email you one, nice and hot.
Boy, I wish that worked.
Oh, me too. This is definitely a famous pizza and bar in Flagstaff, Arizona. So definitely check them out. Next week, later on this week, we want to remind you of a special Train Aficionado live show. Myself and my dad will be hosting it live from Glitzen, PA at the Glitzen Tunnel. We'll be talking about railfanning at the Horseshoe Curve in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Make sure you join us Friday, October the 9th at
8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific, and we will take care of all that for you. So we'll continue on, and we've got mail. Hey, make sure you sign up for the Train Aficionado Trackside Bulletin newsletter on our website, trainaficionado.com. Make sure you follow that, and sign up on our website. I'll be happy to keep you updated on special shows and so on through the Trackside Bulletin. So make sure you sign up after the broadcast tonight. Go to trainaficionado.com. And the Scanner Guys, hosted by myself and Rich Carlson, we will be on Wednesday, October the 7th. I will be actually in Glitzen, broadcasting live from there. So I'll be remote in a different location, traveling with scanners. This is going to be a cool show. And this is going to pertain to a lot of you guys, rail fans. This will give you some ideas of how to set up a scanner in your vehicle and what's available out there. This is Rich's mobile shack here, which I can see. It looks like a 996P2, a 536, and then you've got a 436 that's in the cup holder there. And then you have a two-way radio. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm a ham operator, and I also am licensed on GMRS and very active on GMRS. So my ham radio, it's a dual bander, but it's type accepted, so I can use it on GMRS as well. And so what I normally do with that radio is on the one band, I have the local road channel, which in this case is 160.935, because it works really well on railroad channels. And then I usually have the GMRS on the other side, which is the way the radio is currently set up. And then the reason I had the 436 on and in the car is because when I'm sitting in the car in between trains, I'll turn the engine off so I'm not burning gas sitting there for 6 hours. And unfortunately, the way my car is set up, I can't have the radios on without the ignition, without the engine running, because that particular car does not have an auxiliary setting where I can turn just the accessories on without the ignition being on. It's a goofy thing. Some of the newer cars have that. And
is it a push to start?
Yep.
Have you tried the push to start without the brake engaged?
Yeah, but it doesn't turn on the radios. The installer that ran the wire couldn't find the power lead, couldn't find a place to tap for that. So I did the install myself, but I had an installer drill the antenna mounts on the roof and run the power lead from underneath the engine, so underneath the hood. So that's okay. So I always have a pocket scanner with me anyways. So my 436 was doing double duty. That was my car radio for when the engine was off. Then of course I had my 125 that when I got out of the car, it would take that with. So, but and you notice my cooler and my camera bag.
Yeah, that's for sure. I could see that right there in the background on the passenger side.
Yeah. So in Arizona, you do not leave the house without a cooler and water, because Flagstaff, it's not a big deal, but you go out into like where I'm at, it's 105 degrees this time of year. You don't leave the house without water.
That's for sure. So we'll continue on with the presentation here. We want to remind you to follow, like, and subscribe to Train Aficionado on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And of course, check out our website, trainaficionado.com. And then next week's scheduled show is next month, I should say. Next month's scheduled show is November the 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we can't tell you enough, subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button on there. And don't forget about our broadcast on Friday. So do we have any questions that we want to dive into before we wrap up the broadcast?
I got a couple of quick comments too. Joe is railfanning on the CN Waukesha subdivision in Waukesha, Wisconsin. That's the former Wisconsin Central, if I'm not mistaken, doing some evening railfanning. The Wisconsin Central was my railroad of choice for many years because I happen to live right next to the tracks there. And then it was CN before I moved. Let's see here. Art is in Sacramento. Les is out there. John is our buddy from Jersey. He's always out here. Oh, we got a viewer from New South Wales, Australia.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, that's that's we have a few Australians that call on the phone into Scannermaster that we deal with quite often. Wally is in Chicago, and James got our trivia question correct. So there, Joe was inside one of those Siemens Charger locomotives in Franklin Park at the railroad days a couple years ago. It was really sleek. So Franklin Park is in the northwest suburbs, it's just southeast of O'Hare Airport, and every summer they have railroad days because there's you got the Harbor Belt, you got the Milwaukee Road, and there's all kinds of railroads that all cross and come together through Franklin Park, and it's a really big part of the community. And they have railroad days every summer, and the railroads through there, they bring locomotives and cars, and you can go up and tour the cars, tour the locomotives. So Amtrak brought their Charger that's made by Siemens, and to that, I've been to a few of the railroad days there. I don't know if they had one this summer because of the COVID-19 thing, but almost every year that they have that, and it's a really great celebration of railroading. And it's nice that the town embraced their railroad heritage instead of fighting it. So Joe's checking in. Carmen checked in. He's on milepost 290.55 on the Norfolk Southern tier line. That's the one that goes across New York State.
Yeah.
So you can look up on a timetable and find out where Carmen is from. So let's see here. Joe is watching the hump operation in Galesburg. The virtual Railfan has got a camera in Galesburg, but unfortunately it doesn't view the hump, but it does view the junction and the Amtrak station there. So it's a great camera to watch. But you see some of the yard operations coming in and out of the Galesburg yard. And Galesburg is a neat place on the BNSF. The BN part of BNSF, Burlington Northern, and the SF, which is Santa Fe, they came together. Their main lines came together in Galesburg. And even before the BNSF merger, that was a very important location for both railroads. And then when they merged, it became even much more important. And it is it's a huge railroad town. Wilbur's checking in from Chicago area. Dale is finally on his road location in Amtrak country. So he's up in Montana. So cool. A lot of maintenance away work going on up there before the snow. Alicia is checking in. Carmen said that the Norfolk Southern stopped using the hump at Enola Yard, which is just outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the yard is not easy to get to.
What it used to be.
Huh? And it's not easy to get to.
Yeah, and it ain't what it used to be. It used to be like one of the largest railroad yards in the country. It may still be, but they apparently stopped using the hump there for flat switching, and they're probably blocking trains more efficiently. So they're just not. And there are many less merchandise trains, which usually require humping, versus intermodal and unit trains. So there are less trains these days that require hump operations. So there are a lot less humps out there. I know the Union Pacific shut down one of the humps at the Grand Island Yard, Bailey Yard, and a lot of railroads are reducing or eliminating humps around the country.
We'll just take this moment to remind you about the show that's coming up this Friday. We'll be featuring my dad and I Friday, October the 9th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Make ssure you tune in. It'll be a good show this Friday.
Yeah. Just to clarify something, the BC 125 and the SR 30 and most other unit and scanners these days are powered off of USB. So you can plug that USB charger into any USB cable into any USB charger or any USB port. So if you got a USB port in your car, you can plug that in. So if you take a look on the side of the radio, you'll see the USB port, and you just plug that USB cable into a charger. If you got one of those little plastic wall warts, that's the one that comes with an iPhone.
And we got a cigarette lighter adapter one, right?
Yeah. There you go. The camera's over here. There you go.
It's a little white out.
Yeah, show them the USB port on the front of the charger adapter. Yeah. So if you got that little rectangular USB port, it's kind of hard to see with the lighting, but that little rectangular USB port, there you go. Perfect. If you got one of those in your car, you can use that to power your Uniden scanner and some of the Whistler scanners as well, the TRXs.
Yeah.
Carmen obviously knows absolutely nothing about pizza.
At
an hour 20, he wrote that pizza is supposed to be sliced in triangles, not squares. Carmen, you have obviously never been to Chicago and had a good thin crust Chicago pizza cut in squares.
Now, Rich, we're going to go a little off topic as
we always do. What's new, right?
Okay, so there's that Chicago style. So is also deep dish also another Chicago thing, right?
Yeah, there are two Chicago style pizzas. We have what we call pub pizza, which is the thin crust and usually cut in squares. And that's a pub pizza. About the closest approximation that you might see, if you ever see a Tombstone pizzas in the stores, those are Chicago style pub pizzas. And in fact, a lot of pubs in Chicago will cook those up and so they're very good. And that's a Chicago style thin crust pizza. And then there's the Chicago thick crust pizza or stuffed pizza, which if you get Lou Manaldi's, which is probably the most well known, and that is appropriately cut into triangles. But that is, this thick, stuffed with cheese and sausage and all the other stuff you put in there. And that, you almost got to eat that with a knife and fork because it just ain't no way you're going to be able to eat that without wearing half of it on your shirt.
The closest thing that I've had to deep dish, being from the Northeast, was Uno's. Uno's deep dish pizza. Is that very similar to what you would get locally in Chicago?
Yeah, it's kind of a commercialized version.
So it's probably way better.
Yeah, Lou Malnati's is probably the best well-known type. If you're out in the Phoenix area, they have a chain of pizza restaurants, Chicago-style pizza restaurants called Oregano's. And they have Chicago-style deep dish and Chicago-style thin crust. So because it's Chicago people who built these restaurants, and they're very, very good. So we'll go, and my wife and I will go to Oregano's, and we'll buy a small, thick pizza or stuffed pizza, and we'll each have a slice. I might have a second one if I'm really hungry. And then we'll bring the other 4 slices or 6 slices home and eat those for dinner for the next 2 nights. So.
Yeah. Oh, I used to get at Uno's. There's no Uno's down here in the Carolinas, but I would get the personal pizza.
Yeah.
And, they would cut it into 4 slices. And yes, you would eat it with a fork and knife. And I would be completely full and completely content at the end of that meal. So definitely I want to, when I come out to Arizona, you have to take me there. And then if we do a road trip to the Illinois, I want genuine, I want to try a genuine deep dish.
Yeah, you go to any of the little pubs in Chicago, north side, south side, any of those little pubs in Chicago, they will have that. There's a restaurant up in Skokie that we've been to called the Village Inn, who has the best thin crust pizza, pub pizza. And my personal favorite of all time, and this is the pizza I grew up on in the Chicago area, is called Jake's. And if you're in the Chicago area, you know Jake's Pizza. And I could sit down and eat an entire Jake's Pizza myself. That's probably why I look like I do. But yeah, oh god, Geno's East, yeah, Ray. Geno's East is okay, but yeah, Jake's is much better. Lou Malnati's if you like the thin the stuffed pizza, and there's a bunch of other ones, but those are the best. So, so Carmen asks if you're staying at the Tunnel Inn in Gallitzin.
Yes, I am.
Yep, say hi to Bob Elder.
I will say hi to him. That's for sure.
Okay, so everybody knows what Jonathan's going to be next week.
Well, yeah, this week. So it's tail end of
this week. Yeah.
Well, not next week. I'm only there for from Wednesday to Sunday, and then I'm returning on Sunday.
Cool. And so is the SDS 100 a decent railroad scanner? It's not bad. The SDS 100 is intended mostly for digital simulcast systems. That's what it's designed for. It works fine on analog channels, but I wouldn't spend $650, $700 on that if all I wanted to listen to were railroads. These days, I would spend $130 and get a 125.
Yeah,
or get 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, I mean the good thing about the 125 AT. I don't have it in here because I'm packing away my stuff. So what I can recommend is a VHF antenna. If you can put a VHF antenna on the 125 AT with the BNC connection, that'll help you tremendously, because if you're monitoring just the railroads, or the other favorite that Rich has is the Austin Condor. It's a floppy antenna. It's smart when it hits your hand.
But it works really well on VHF.
Yeah, so that's another antenna that I would recommend.
The problem with this is when you got a railroad on your belt, it's going to be sticking you in the air every time you bend over because it's so long. But it is a great VHF antenna.
That's for sure. It certainly is a good VHF antenna.
So Ray asks, where in Des Plaines can he railfan? A lot of times the cops will frown on if you get too close to the railroad lines. So, yeah, certain towns have certain areas that you can and can't go to. Remember, don't go on the railroad property without permission, because that's trespassing. You can end up getting arrested. But there are usually places where you can go on public property. So depending on what it is you want to see, Des Plaines, I used to live in Des Plaines, so I'm very familiar with it, has 3 main railroads that cross through Des Plaines. You have the Northwestern, old Northwestern, which is now the UP Northwest line where the commuter trains are along Northwest Highway. You've got the Wisconsin Central, which runs north and south, and then it kind of runs from the northeast to the southwest is the Union Pacific Freight Belt, the Milwaukee Sub, and it's also got Sioux Line CP trains on that as well. And they all come together at a place just west of downtown called DeVal. The problem is there's no place public where you can get a good shot of all 3 lines at DeVal. So you're going to have to find a public sidewalk or a public street someplace in the area. Take a look at Google Maps and with the aerial photography and find a place on public property where you can go and railfan. So if you stay on public property, you'll be fine.
Yeah, depending on a lot of times what you can see by looking at the satellite imagery is spots where there is places that railfans frequent. And sometimes if you're lucky, if you pull it up on street level, sometimes you can see a railfan with a camera in hand waiting for the train to come in. So you know it's a known location. There's been a few times that I've been there and on Google Maps, that is. And I've seen, I look at it from satellite. Oh, that would be a good rail fanning spot. Let me look at it from street level. Then I look at street level. Oh, there's a car and there's the rail fan. I'm like, oh, this has got to be a known location.
Yeah, there was a guy who used to write the Railfan guides to Chicago, and his name was John Switchert or something like that. He was from the LaGrange area. And this is going back into the 70s and maybe the early 80s. And he wrote a series of the Railfan guides to Chicago with a really good map and places where you could and couldn't go. Unfortunately, it hasn't been updated in the last 30 years, but It was, for its day, it was like the Railfan's Bible to Chicago. And this was before scanners were a thing, really. So that wasn't part of it. But these days, look online for Railfan guides for your area. And a lot of times they'll tell you places which are safe to Railfan and which aren't. Typically, if you're allowed to be there, you can Railfan from there. So don't do anything stupid like try to Railfan on on private property without permission of the property owner.
Yeah, this is something that I've been working on the Train Aficionado website, is these trackside guides. I finally have one complete for for Altoona, Pennsylvania. So if we go to trackside guide and click on Altoona, Pennsylvania, I have here the scanner frequencies that are listed. I also have a horseshoe curve train timetable, which shows all the various trains that are through there, which I was able to get from the horseshoe curve. I basically converted it to a PDF. So actually I can show this on the screen here. So it has all the eastbounds and westbounds. So this was something that the horseshoe curve provides to people. So what I did is I retyped this out into a format that's easier to read, and plus I broke it out so it's east and westbound. This took me a little bit of time, Rich, but this is how much I love. This is how much I love Railfanning there. So thanks to them. Oops, I went back on the wrong screen there. Let's and then I also have a milepost chart that I've worked on for the horseshoe curve. So this has got all the mileposts on it. I'm pointing at the screen. I'm doing the same thing you're doing.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, so it's got the mileposts, the number of tracks that are there, and then it has the description of what it's known for, and then of course if there's a track detector. So that's another thing that I've worked on there. And then of course I have I PDF'd one of the timetables. So if you want to look at the actual timetable, you can do that here. And this is another thing that I've worked on. So I'm trying to be very thorough with this. I've marked all the known Railfanning locations that are at the horseshoe curve, including points of interest, food, and of course.
Oh, you love your sheets.
Yep, sheets. And the great thing about sheets out there, you can get a drink, you can get something to eat, and bathrooms, the essentials, and gas. If you're going to be chasing a train, make sure you fill your belly, and get some drinks.
Yeah.
And go to the bathroom.
Get gas for you and your car.
Yep. So, this is something that I've worked on. I mean, there's so many cool locations here. I mean, you can see that, if I was able to put my camera through, there's a chain link fence on a public street, and I was able to shoot through the chain link fence, and I got some really cool shots of the timetable during the turntable, I should say, the timetable, the turntable there. But yeah, and these are sample shots of what the photos would look like in each one of these areas. So certainly stop by trainaficionado.com. I'm going to work on some more trackside guides as I'm able to, but yeah, it's under trackside guides. And then I PDF everything so you can print it off and take it with you when you Railfan. And the other thing too is the website is mobile friendly, so pull it up on your phone as well.
Yeah. Another thing, you can get sheets of batteries for your scanner.
Yes. Well,
Steve mentioned that. Yeah.
I went to what was it? Yesterday I went to Sam's Club. And I got the $16 worth of batteries, the 48 batteries. So there's no shortage on batteries for the.
I do the same thing. I don't bother using rechargeable batteries because it's just easier for me to go to Sam's Club or Costco, get a huge thing of batteries, and it works great. And I keep a package in the car and a package at the house, and it's just so much easier. There was a question from Vance. He's got an old Pro 43. Besides the scanning speed, is there any reason to upgrade to a BC 125? Well, other than to keep Scanner Master in business, the Pro 43 was a great scanner in its day, and if it's still a good working order, it's still going to be great for railfanning. The Pro 43, when it first came out, was a revolutionary scanner. We're going to talk about this on one of our future scanner shows, scanner guys shows on classic scanners. But it was the first handheld scanner that was include the military aircraft band. And at that time, I lived right next to a naval air station, and it was fantastic to be able to listen to the military aircraft band on a handheld scanner, because back then it was very difficult to do so. But the Pro 43 was the first one that was easily available that did that, and I think it had 400 channels, which at the time was just phenomenal. And it was a nice compact little scanner too, so it fit in your shirt pocket just like the 125 does. It was roughly the same size, maybe even a little bit smaller than the 125. So in its day, it was a great scanner, and if it still works, it's going to be fine for railfanning. So if you've got one, great. Otherwise, get a 125, and you'll be happy. The biggest downfall to the Pro 43 is that it doesn't have railroad service search, and it isn't narrowband friendly, so it might not sound quite as good as a 125 does on the narrowband channels that they use these days.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, the 125, when that radio came out, I was I was employed at Scanner Master, and I was like, this is the scanner for railfanning. I mean, I was totally in love with that radio. It had alpha tagging. The only time that you could get alpha tagging was on a trunking scanner for the most part. With this generation of scanners that are currently out right now, you would have to spend $169 and higher to get that capability.
Oh yeah, and I mean this scanner came out close to 15 years ago now.
I'm not 100% certain. It's been out for a while.
But yeah, it's been a while, and the fact that it's still one of the scanners that they're making now, one of their frontline scanners, tells you how good a job they did with it. So it works really well and has the features that people need. So, and plus, it works. It receives really well on both the aviation band and the railroad channel. So, so it's great for that. So, so Carmen wrote that the hills around Horseshoe Curve should be on fire with the color this week and next. So you should have some great color there.
Yeah. The only thing with the curve that it's getting a little bit, as we can see on the camera, it's getting a little bit grown over again, so I like going up there, but the only thing is sometimes it's, as the growth comes up, it's extremely difficult to shoot. Because, then I'm looking for spots to be able to, can I get the locomotive there? And, it's kind of, it becomes a challenge, but I was thinking of that with the fall foliage. So that's probably worth going up there. We're there for 3 full days. The reason why I'm actually going up on Wednesday is because of the Scanner Guys show. Originally, I had our room for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then leaving on Sunday. And then my dad and I were talking about, let's leave early in the morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning. So the Scanner Guys show doesn't get over until 10, sometimes 11. I'm going to go to bed for a couple hours, get up and drive. I'm thinking, why don't I just do the show on the road? Because we have that capability of doing it. So that's what's happening. So I'll be live during the Scanner Guys show from the Tunnel Inn. So that should be interesting. We're going to get up early on Wednesday morning, drive up there, check into the room. I'm going to make sure everything is in working order, then do some rail fanning. Hopefully go to one of those great places that, in Crescent has both sheets and vetoes. I think
what else do you need, right?
Yeah. What more do you need? That's for sure.
Yeah. The question came up whether the 26 came out before the Pro 43. I'm not positive. I know. I remember buying the Pro 43 specifically because it did military aircraft, and there wasn't another scanner at the time, so they may have come out in similar time frames, but as I recall, when I bought that Pro 43, it was specifically because there were no other scanners capable of doing military aircraft band at the time. So it may have come out before that. I don't know, but that was why I bought the Pro 43 at the time. So now, when we're going back to the Horseshoe Curve, the first time I was Horseshoe Curve was probably 30 or so years ago, 30 or more years ago, and the hillside was on fire. There is literally a Conrail at the time. Rail grinding train came through and basically started the entire hillside on fire. And I still have VHS video because I had one of those great big huge VHS video recorders that I lugged this thing up and down the stairs because there was no funicular going up the hill to Horseshoe Curve at the time. And the thing was huge and heavy. And I was like, ugh, God, I was tired at the end. But I got some great shots on video of the hillside on fire as the trains are going by it. And in the 30 years since, I've probably been up there close to a dozen times, or 10, 11 times maybe.
One of those times was with me.
One of those times was with you, but it's gotten more and more overgrown. And unfortunately, it's going to take a forest fire to clean that out.
Well, they did clean it up. So the first time that I went to the curve, it was either the first time or the second time, they kind of trimmed things back. They did do
from the trackside. Yeah.
From the trackside. Yeah. So that was nice. And then I noticed it's gotten progressively more difficult to be able to, I had a clean shot looking in the eastern direction to that signal. You can see it on the camera all the time, the signal there. I had a nice clean shot, like I would, the couple of times I went there, I perfectly framed my shot of a train just going right underneath there. And I've gotten some really phenomenal shots there of the trains. And my wife actually got a shot of me, which is on one of my websites. One of me actually taking a photo of a heritage unit. So she got me and the heritage unit. My back is to her, but she got the heritage unit going by with me taking a photo of it, which is one awesome photo that she was able to take when I was there. And that's really one of my favorite photos, because, I mean, it's kind of documenting, my fascination with trains.
Yeah. And I've seen that picture a couple times, so it's a great one. But it's the forest beyond the tracks that is really getting overgrown and really getting full. So that's gonna get bad, and there's no way to trim the whole mountainside, and that's a forest fire coming down just waiting to happen.
Yeah,
that's the problem they have in the big fires we have here in Arizona and California is all this growth just doesn't get trimmed out and it becomes fodder for the next fire.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, well, that's pretty much the end of the thing. Jimmy checked in to say hello, and that's pretty much the end of the comments that we've got so far.
Yeah, so why don't we just do a quick reminders, and then we'll wrap up this edition of the show. As a reminder, special Train Aficionado show live on Friday, October the 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. My dad and I are going to be in Glitzen at the Tunnel Inn, and we'll be broadcasting live from there, talking about railfanning in and around Altoona. I'll share some of the photos that I've taken up to this point. In the slideshow, we'll just it'll be kind of a laid back Train Aficionado live show, and it should be a good time. So definitely join us. And let me go to the next slide. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to all of our social media: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. And then there's our show for next month is Monday, November the 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. That's the day before Election Day. So hopefully After November 3rd, we won't be blasted with any more political ads. I know everybody's probably tired of everywhere they're seeing political ads. So that'll be a good day, to not be looking at political ads. Let me give you a quick reminder on the Scanner Guys next show, which I'll be live from Glitzen, and Rich will be in his Arizona studio. We're going to be talking about traveling with scanners, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel. And if you're just a rail fan and you're watching this as a rail fan, definitely tune into that show. That's going to help you with some mobile shack setups. May give you some pointers. Even we have a few photos, like you can see here, what you can do with a portable scanner. So if that's all you have for a radio, you might get some things that say, boy, I should do that with my portable radio.
Yep. Yeah. And we'll have some products that you might be interested in to help you in your mobile installation, and hints on some of it. Should be a great show. So if you got a car and you got a scanner, you can put the two of them together to have a mobile scanner set up.
Yeah, that's for sure. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. This is certainly a new show for us, and we're learning, how it will all work and lay out. But thank you so much for joining us. We will have another show next month. I believe we're talking movies and trains. Is that right, Rich?
Yep, I think that's what it was. Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of movies that have trains on them. Remember Silver Streak, and North by Northwest. If you're an old movie fan, there's a bunch of them that just may have a train in the background, may not even be part of the show, but it's just in the background. Throw Mama from the Train. That was that was a good one. And so there's going to be some. We're going to have some fun with that one.
Yeah, so that'll be our next normal scheduled show. That's going to be Monday, November the 2nd. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you tune in and hit the subscribe button while you're here. We thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
And I'm Rich Carlson.
Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you again on Wednesday, and then we'll see you again on Friday as well. So be a busy week for us.
Busy week. You got it. Have a safe trip on the way there and back, and we'll see you guys next time.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.